This is Global Community Radio Channel 1, News and More. Portions rebroadcast on KFZR-LP, Fraser Park, KIEZ-LP, Monroe, KLQS-LP, Agua Dulce, KPDO, Pescadero, WLRI-LP, Gap, WMUU-LP, Madison, WRAQ-LP, Angelica, WXDR-LP, New Orleans, and WXIR-LP, Rochester.
This is Al Jazeera.
Are vanishing at an alarming rate.
And I'm Peter Slimmer in Doha with all your sport, including dreaming of a Canadian first. History beckons for the Raptors as Toronto gears up for a big night in the NBA Finals.
Hello, an opposition figure in Sudan associated with the rebel group SPLMN says he has been forcibly deported to South Sudan. Yasser Arman is one of 3 prominent members of the group who were arrested over the weekend and were released on Monday, according to Sudanese state television. Well, Arman has tweeted saying, "I've been deported against my will by a military helicopter from Khartoum to Juba. I was not aware of where they were taking me." He says he was tied up in the helicopter together with fellow group leaders Ismail Jalab and Mubarak Ardol. The trio were arrested after they met the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Friday. He is trying to mediate between the military junta and the opposition. Well, a little earlier we spoke to Yasser Arman on the phone from Juba and he explained what had happened.
This morning, they came and they told us we have been released, but actually they took us and to the airport, and in the airport we found a military airplane, and I asked them that I don't want to go outside Sudan. Is this military airplane going to take me to another prison inside Sudan? They said yes, this aircraft cannot go outside Sudan. And then they tie us up. They closed my eyes with my colleague, and then when we crossed the border of South Sudan, they told me that they are going to take me to South Sudan, and that the government of South Sudan, they have been always asking about me, and I came to Juba. I was well received by the government, by the president, by everybody. I believe I have been deported because those who are ruling Sudan now, they don't want change directions, and they don't want change.
Human Rights Watch has issued a statement about the deportations. It says, "We are concerned about the arbitrary detention of opposition figures and other individuals in recent days, and reports that people are still missing following the June the 3rd attack on protesters. We're also concerned by reports that armed security forces have obstructed medical services. We urge the authorities to ensure safe access to hospitals and clinics and to rein in all abusive forces and allow an international investigation into the killings and other abuses of protesters." And Sudan's military has ordered more troops onto the streets as protesters observe the second day of a general strike. Opposition activists called for an indefinite campaign of civil disobedience until the military junta hands over power to a civilian government. Well, meanwhile, the United Nations is refusing to hand over its peacekeeping mission in Darfur to Sudan's military leadership as it continues its pullout from the region. Last month, the Military Council wrote a letter formally requesting a transfer of all assets from the mission, which was established in 2007 following the Darfur conflict in which hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed. But the UN says it will only hand over its assets to a civilian government.
The Transitional Military Council has decreed to the African Union UN mission in Darfur, known as UNAMID, to hand over its premises as part of our withdrawal next year in 2020 to the Rapid Support Forces. But that is not in keeping with our existing agreement with the Sudanese government and our insistence that the facilities be used solely for civilian purposes. The latest special report of the chairperson of the African Union Commission and the Secretary General makes clear that the end users of all UN installations should be civilians. It is important that UNAMID's premises, once handed over, are used for the benefit of all the people of Darfur.
Germany's foreign minister is in Tehran looking for ways to preserve the Iranian nuclear deal. Heiko Maas says a European financial system to circumvent US sanctions should soon be up and running. Germany and other EU leaders are continuing to support the 2015 agreement despite Washington's withdrawal last year.
There is a serious situation in the region. Escalation of tension is becoming uncontrollable, and military action wouldn't be in line with the interests of any party. I've spoken with all the parties in my regional visit, and no one has called for an escalation of tensions. That's the message I'm conveying from the region. We had intensive talk today on the nuclear deal. Germany, France, and Britain called for supporting the deal, and we are fulfilling our commitments. We can't do any miracle in this regard, but we are doing our utmost efforts to prevent the failure of the deal.
But Iran's foreign minister says the only way to reduce tension in the region is by ending what he described as an economic war.
The United States has declared economic war against Iran. This war is very dangerous for the region and the international order. The measures taken by the U.S. after its withdrawal from the deal, for us, mean targeting the Iranian nation. Iran has proven that it adheres to international commitments. 15 IAEA reports prove this reality. But Iran is also obligated to defend the rights of the Iranian nation.
Meanwhile, the United Nations has confirmed Iran is increasing production of enriched uranium. Tehran had previously warned it would do this if new US sanctions weren't lifted. The UN's nuclear agency says it's unclear whether Iran has now violated the 2015 nuclear deal.
I prefer not to mention the specific figure due to this fluctuation, but I can say that pace of production increased in accordance with our latest measurement.
And our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett is following events in the United States.
The White House has not responded directly to the Iranian foreign minister's comments, but there's no question that it has continued its what it calls maximum pressure campaign on Iran. The latest, of course, the sanctions on Iran's largest petrochemical company. They say that this is in response to its financial support for the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. The United States, of course, has labeled the IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization. Now, these latest sanctions by the Trump administration come even as the administration has said that it is willing to sit down with Iran's leadership and to have talks without preconditions, according to the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Now, these sanctions also follow an escalation by the Trump administration, of course, the deployment of the carrier strike group to the Persian Gulf, even as Iran has maintained until recently that it has complied with the terms of the 2015 nuclear agreement to limit its nuclear program, saying that this is backed up by international investigators. The allegations from the United States, however, is that Iran continues to destabilize the broader Middle East. It is a threat to U.S. interests in the area, and as a result, it will continue to protect its interests, even saying that it does not want war. It only wants to see that Iran does not acquire nuclear weapons.
Rami Khoury is a journalist and professor at the American University of Beirut, and he joins me now live from the Lebanese capital. Thanks for being with us on the programme. Lots to talk about concerning Iran right now. Let's deal first of all with the German foreign minister in Tehran for those high-level talks. EU countries really struggling to find a way through this, aren't they? A way to keep that deal going without the United States, but not actually break the US sanctions.
Yeah, they have to really strike a very delicate balance. They agree with the United States to a certain extent that Iran has to be monitored in terms of its nuclear production, and they're not fully in agreement with the U.S. on the accusations about Iran's foreign policies and meddling in the region. The French are a little bit closer to the U.S., the Germans are not. So they're trying to find a balance that allows them to keep doing business with Iran to a certain extent. Certainly humanitarian sales should be able to go through with the new payment system that has been set up by the Europeans. And they don't want to be, the Europeans don't want to be seen as lackeys of the Americans and doing anything that Washington tells them to do, because if there is an increase in tension between Iran and the U.S. and some, God forbid, military action, the Europeans will suffer much, much more than the United States would. So they're working very hard to try to cool down the situation and ultimately be involved in mediation if possible.
But now, of course, we've got the IAEA saying that Iran has accelerated its production of enriched uranium. It doesn't say how big that acceleration is, but to what extent does the IAEA coming out and saying that, to what extent does that help the US position and policy on Iran?
I don't think it helps the U.S. I think what it does is show that if the U.S. is going to try to strangle Iran economically, the Iranians are going to respond by taking symbolic actions. I mean, they can increase the enrichment level and the rate of enrichment. They're not producing nuclear bombs. They don't have enough fissile material to produce nuclear bombs, and they probably don't have the delivery mechanisms. And they say they don't want to make nuclear bombs anyway. That's why they reached the agreement with Obama in the first place. So it's probably a sign of the resolute nature of the Iranian position, that they're not going to be pushed around and bullied around, that they will respond. And they've done so also in previous weeks with some of these acts in the Middle East, attacks against the Saudi pipelines and ships in the Gulf that probably were done by friends of Iran. All of this is a war. There's a war going on, which the United States essentially started by breaking the agreement and putting on new sanctions. The Iranians are responding to an extent that they hope doesn't lead to war, but convinces the Americans that unilateral sanctions and threats are not going to get them what they want. And this is, of course, the history of Iran, that it doesn't give in.
Yeah, is that, Ronnie, is that a risky policy on behalf of the Iranians to sort of effectively test out the countries that are still signed up to the nuclear deal by increasing the enriched uranium production? A symbolic test for those countries to see what they're going to do next?
It depends on the level of enrichment and the extent of the enrichment. If they enrich a little bit more with the centrifuges and other things that they have, probably it's not going to be a big deal. But if they start getting close to the levels where they're breaking the agreement, then that's going to create more problems. But they probably wouldn't do that unilaterally. The Iranians want to maintain the agreement. They reached the agreement after 3 years of negotiations. They're very happy with it. They're also probably willing to negotiate new dimensions of a new agreement. The Americans are now saying they're ready to talk without conditions. The Iranians say they could be persuaded to talk again if the Americans drop the sanctions. So both sides are making noises about negotiating again. And I think, to be fair to the Americans and the Iranians, neither of them want to fight a war, obviously. They would rather have an agreement. And the Iranians would probably make some concessions on some of the issues, for instance, the length of a new agreement. Instead of 10 years, it could be longer. They might even make some concessions on the distance of some of their missiles, but the Americans would have to make concessions in return. So this is really the key now, to tone down the confrontation and the rhetoric, which has happened actually in the last 10 days to some extent. Both sides saying they want to talk under certain conditions. You've got more mediators in the Middle East than you can count. The Japanese prime minister is coming, the German foreign minister is there. The Qatari foreign minister just said his country is trying to play a mediating role. The Iraqis are trying to do something. The Swiss have been involved. So there's just an overload of mediation because nobody will benefit from a military confrontation.
Yeah, a sign of how serious the situation is. Rami Khoury, always good to get your perspective. Thanks for joining us there from Beirut. Thank you. And there is still plenty more to come on this news hour, including more arrests in Kazakhstan over an election criticised for its crackdown on dissent. A case that caused national outrage in India. 6 men are convicted over the rape and murder of an 8-year-old girl. And in sport, the West Indies do their best to raise spirits at the Cricket World Cup. Peter will have the action. Now, the US has said it is gravely concerned as Hong Kong's chief executive vows to press ahead with a controversial new extradition law. More than 1 million people took to the streets on Sunday, the city's largest demonstration in more than a decade. Sarah Clark reports from Hong Kong.
They came and they marched. More than 1 million people crammed Hong Kong streets. Protesters were united in their anger over the proposed extradition laws that could see fugitives here sent to mainland China for trial. Despite the size of this turnout, the city's chief executive says the planned law change will not be scrapped.
While we will continue to do the communication and explanation, there's very little merit to be gained to delay the bill. It will just cause more anxiety and divisiveness in society.
Opposition centres on suspicion that fugitives extradited from Hong Kong won't get a fair trial in mainland China. Human rights groups are leading the campaign. The pro-democracy legislators want the bill shelved.
Now, Carrie Lam is certainly incredible. Any leader with a right mind facing a protest involving more than 1 million people would naturally have a rethink over the issue.
But the city's chief executive says the government is duty-bound to push ahead. It's been fast-tracked through the Legislative Council, with the government hoping for a vote before the end of the month.
This is a very important piece of legislation that will help to uphold justice and also ensure that Hong Kong will fulfill her international obligation in terms of cross-boundary and transnational crimes.
But it's reignited anger in Hong Kong. Sunday's largely peaceful rally ended in violence when police tried to clear protesters outside government headquarters. A few hundred of those demonstrating rammed metal barriers into police barricades. They retaliated with water guns and pepper spray. The draft law will be read a second time in the city's Legislative Council on Wednesday. More protests are expected from both sides in a city where deepening divisions refuse to subside. Sarah Clark, Al Jazeera, Hong Kong.
Well, China says Sunday's demonstrations against the extradition law were the result of foreign interference. Adrian Brown has the reaction from Beijing.
Well, from Beijing's perspective, Hong Kong has become a haven for criminals, which is why it supports plans for a new extradition bill. And on Monday, the Foreign Ministry spokesman confirmed that the central government supports Carrie Lam's efforts in that regard. But he also warned of external intervention in Hong Kong's internal affairs, but he wouldn't elaborate on what he meant by that. He also appeared to dispute the figure that more than 1 million people took part in Sunday's rally and protest, saying he preferred to believe the figure of the Hong Kong government, that no more than 240,000 people had participated. But the message he wanted to get over again and again was that Beijing supports Carrie Lam.
Firstly, the central government will continue to firmly support the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region to push forward the amendments of the extradition bill. Secondly, China is strongly opposed to any external interventions in Hong Kong's legislative affairs.
State-controlled media has largely ignored the events in Hong Kong, but the China Daily newspaper, which tends to reflect government thinking, carried an editorial on Monday which blamed foreign forces for what it called the chaos in Hong Kong, saying the people of Hong Kong had been hoodwinked. The Foreign Ministry spokesman also had another message. He said that Hong Kong's freedoms would continue to be protected by China.
US President Donald Trump says he's open to the possibility of imposing further tariffs on Chinese imports. He's due to meet China's President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Japan later this month. Let's take you live to Washington, D.C. and speak to Al Jazeera's Rosalind Jordan, who's following this for us. And Rod, he's talking tough again on tariffs.
That's right, Felicity. The president earlier on Monday was on Twitter essentially saying that if Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, did not agree to meet with him during the upcoming G20 summit in Osaka, Japan, that the retaliation would be the imposition of a 25% tariff on some $300 million worth of goods imported from China into the U.S. every year. But later, this is what the president had to say when speaking to reporters.
Right now, we're getting 25% or $250 billion worth of goods. So a lot of money is pouring into our treasury. We've never gotten 10 cents from China. Now we're getting a lot of money from China. And I think that's one of the reasons that GDP was so high in the first quarter, because of the tariffs that we've taken in from China. We always have the option to raise it another $300 billion at 25%, and the 25% could be much higher than 25%.
Now, of course, the suggestion that this money is going into the U.S. Treasury has been disputed by economists, Felicity. Actually, what happens when tariffs are imposed on consumer goods is that the companies pass on the money that they're having to pay in tariffs in terms of higher prices, and it's the consumers who end up paying basically for those tariffs. The president is also saying that the deal struck with Mexico about dealing with migrants coming from Central America trying to reach the United States is a very, very good deal, even though there are contradictions and conflicting statements coming from, in particular, the Mexican foreign minister, Mr. Ebrard, saying that there were no secret deals reached on agricultural goods or on trying to restrict the number of people trying to reach U.S. territory. But the president is saying that this is a very good moment in terms of dealing with what he has called an immigration crisis on the border between the U.S. and Mexico.
Ross, in Washington, thank you. Pakistan's former president, Asif Ali Zardari, has been arrested on corruption charges. He's accused of using multiple false bank accounts to launder millions of dollars. Zardari denies the allegations, and his Pakistan People's Party says the case is politically motivated. Charlie Angela has more details.
Asif Zardari being escorted from his home in Islamabad by anti-corruption forces. By his side, his son, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, current chair of the opposition Pakistan People's Party. Surrounded by supporters shouting "Long live Bhutto," a reference to the political dynasty Zardari joined when he married Benazir Bhutto. The former president is accused of using fictitious bank accounts to launder $29 million in kickbacks from government contracts. It's not the first time the man who married into politics has been accused of wrongdoing. Bhutto became Prime Minister in 1988, the first woman to lead a Muslim-majority nation. Zardari followed her into public office and climbed the ranks of the Pakistan People's Party founded by her father. But he faced allegations of corruption then, and his reputation suffered. Zardari was arrested for extortion in 1990, and 6 years later on suspicion of ordering the assassination of Benazir's brother in a political power struggle. He was released from jail in 2004 and moved to Dubai. Bhutto rose above the scandal, becoming Prime Minister twice, until her assassination in December 2007. With her son and chosen heir, Bilawal, still a teenager, Zardari returned to lead her Pakistan People's Party and won the people's vote. He lasted the full 5-year term, the first president to do so, controversially supporting the US in its effort to win the war in Afghanistan and helping former President Barack Obama launch an assault on the Taliban inside Pakistan. But domestic support eroded as attacks increased and after the severe floods of 2010. Zardari chose not to run for re-election in 2013, leaving office with words of reconciliation for his rival, Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif.
We will support you in the fight against the forces which are trying to weaken Pakistan and who don't support democracy and want to do the politics of guns rather than votes.
The Pakistani government, led by Imran Khan, has made fighting corruption a priority. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has already been indicted on corruption charges, while Zardari and his sister are already on bail in at least 7 other cases of corruption and malpractice. The politician denies all wrongdoing. Charlie Angela, Al Jazeera.
Election observers have criticised Sunday's presidential vote in Kazakhstan, which saw Kassym-Jomart Tokayev win by a wide margin. The Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe says the vote was tarnished by violations of fundamental freedoms. Robin Forestier-Walker reports from the capital, Nur-Sultan.
Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's win has been modest compared to the huge support his predecessor used to enjoy. But he still won more than 7% of the votes cast in a 77% turnout, a result he insisted was authentic.
This is a mandate of trust, which I must justify in the next 5 years. The elections themselves show that the citizens of Kazakhstan care about their duties. There was a very large voter turnout. No one forced anyone. It happened naturally.
Al Jazeera cannot independently verify this video, but there are many like it on social media suggesting widespread ballot stuffing. And opposition observers said counts from dozens of polling stations in the capital favored Tokayev's main rival, Amirjan Kosanov.
If you look at the reports I have in my hand, which we collected, Kosanov is leading, or 50-50, or a little bit more, a little bit less. The 15% he supposedly got is a lie. It's disinformation.
Allegations of fraud in this election were supported by the findings of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which called for more political freedoms.
If new president will show this political will and really promote dialogue domestically here with the civil society, with the youth, with the other political actors, I think they will have much more better results.
Until today, the authorities have not appeared open to compromise and dialogue. Clashes between police and mostly peaceful protesters on election day resulted in hundreds of detentions. Now, a very visible sign that no further public dissent will be tolerated. President Tokayev has now offered to set up what he calls a committee for public confidence, mindful that after this election, a divide between authority and society may have to be bridged. Robin Forestier-Walker, Al Jazeera, Nur-Sultan.
All right, still ahead on the News Hour, warnings of an alarming extinction rate, how the quest for food is wiping out the planet's biodiversity. The angry residents taking drastic action in Ghana against an unusual form of noise pollution. And in sport, Ferrari fury while the fallout from the Canadian Grand Prix is far from over.
The reports on Monday of large hail anywhere from western Switzerland up to southern Germany. And this line of cloud, it doesn't look much, I know, but that's what it's been reported as producing. And that line goes up overnight over western Germany, ends up during the day on Tuesday, somewhere over Denmark or southern Sweden, so that could be interesting. At the same time, out to the west, another area of low pressure is developing. Remember, it's June. I know it doesn't look like it, but this is what's happening, keeping much of northwestern Europe windy, wet, disappointing for the time of year. Now that's happening in the west and will continue to happen in the Bay of Biscay, hosting a developing low. That's for Wednesday. Further east, it's just been settled and increasingly warm. Vienna's temperature of 33. And despite what might have been happening in southern Sweden, even that's quietened down to some degree, disappointing 14. But from Warsaw southwards, warmth and occasional showers, thunderstorms. And that's true in Turkey as well. Over the water of the Mediterranean, though, there's not much going on. That streak of cloud is probably just that. The temperature in Tunis has come down a bit to 27. Well, quite a lot, really, largely because the sun's been taken away. Still 22 in Rabat. Maybe disappointing, considering, again, the amount of sunshine. But it remains hot, of course, in Egypt.
In 2008, Raghi Omar traveled across the United States, discovering what it was like to be both a patriotic American and a devout Muslim.
Can you be Muslim and American? You have to be American first.
I didn't have much appreciation for why it would be a big deal that a Muslim would be elected to the United States Congress.
Rewind. Islam in America on Al Jazeera.
As governments fail to cut emissions, scientists are proposing drastic measures to save the planet. People in power raise technological endeavors to counter humanity's pollutants against the risks of further meddling with the environment.
Do you ever feel like this is playing God? It's actually quite unsettling and quite frankly makes me quite anxious.
Climate Hackers on Al Jazeera.
Again, and reminder of the top stories on Al Jazeera. The Sudanese opposition leader Yasir Arman says he's been forcibly removed from Khartoum to the South Sudanese capital, Juba. He's one of 3 opposition leaders who were arrested over the weekend. Iran's foreign minister has held talks with his German counterpart to try to preserve the 2015 nuclear deal. Mohammad Javad Zarif says the US must end what he described as its economic war against Tehran. And the US has said it's gravely concerned about a controversial new law in Hong Kong which will allow extraditions to China. More than 1 million people demonstrated against the law on Sunday, the largest protest there in more than a decade. A court in India has found 6 men guilty over the gang rape and murder of an 8-year-old Muslim girl. The case sparked national outrage last year after several state ministers from the ruling Hindu Nationalist Party defended the men. Victoria Gatenby reports.
Security was tight outside court as the accused arrived to face justice for their role in the kidnap, gang rape and murder of an 8-year-old girl.
Of the 7 men who stood trial, 6 were found guilty. 3 were policemen who destroyed evidence, and the 3 main accused were found guilty of kidnap, rape and murder.
The victim was held prisoner in this temple for 4 days in January last year before she was strangled and beaten to death. The court heard that it was part of a plan to force her Muslim nomadic community to leave Katua district in the Indian-administered Kashmir area of Jammu. The victim's family faced death threats after their daughter's death. As a result, the Supreme Court moved the trial to the neighbouring state of Punjab.
We are worried for our other kids after the killing of our girl. We don't even let them go to school. People tried to pressure us after we registered the case with the police. Many people tried to shield the culprits by mounting pressure on the investigation.
The men who attacked the girl were Hindu. The case sparked national outrage, which intensified when some state ministers of the governing Hindu nationalist BJP party initially defended the accused. Indian law allows for the death penalty for rapists of girls under the age of 12. But in this case, the judge sentenced the 3 men convicted of rape and murder to life in prison.
We congratulate the Indian courts, and we've been fighting for this for more than a year. Today is not a day for celebration, but a day of solidarity.